Last week on this program, we introduced how the American Pastors Network first got involved in Ukraine in 2014, and the miraculous invitation from pastors and members of government seeking the assistance of the American Pastors Network in helping to teach biblical principles of freedom and the framework of constitutional government. I can recall with great specificity the comments of the leaders then who looked longingly to America as the nation after which they wanted to model themselves. They made a statement then which resonates in my ears even to this very moment. They said this: "We want to become like America was, not like America is." What a convicting statement. You know, in reality, America as a nation has for over a generation moved increasingly away from God and biblical principles, now literally incapable at the highest levels of providing the moral leadership to the world that it once did. And without a bold pulpit and Christian people truly living like citizens of the kingdom of heaven, there could be no freedom or peace here on this earth. But for those who fear God, the blessings of God can follow. But with that invitation that we received in 2014, we went to Ukraine and for 8 years have been involved on various levels with pastors and government officials. God is blessed, and we believe that for such a time as this. Now, with that introduction, I welcome you to Stand in the Gap, and I pray that you'll stay with me and Isaac Crockett as we begin part 2 of our program entitled Understanding the Ukraine Conflict, Past and Present. In just a few moments, we're going to talk once more with Pastor Alex Cherny, a fourth-generation Crimean and a man who pastored in Ukraine there in that area for over 25 years. Today, Pastor Cherny will go into some further detail as to what is actually motivating the conflict in Ukraine, how the church is responding in Ukraine to this conflict, and I'll conclude at the end about how and why you as viewers of Stand in the Gap can confidently pray and give to the American Pastors Network Ukraine 10 Men Initiative program. APN is now leading teams of 10 men who are courageously delivering aid to thousands, tens of thousands of Christians now displaced in Ukraine and in need of emergency aid. And you can help, and I'll tell you more about that at the end of the program. But with that, let me welcome back again, once more, Pastor Alex Cherny. Alex, thank you again for being with us as we get into this second part of our look into Ukraine through the perspective and the filter of someone who was born there, yourself, and has been so involved for so many years. So anyways, welcome back.
Thank you, Sam. Pleasure to be with you.
Alex, let's start here. On one of our Stand in the Gap Today radio programs, we covered this issue, and I want you to share it again here with us, our viewers, right now. And that is this. You gave me some insight into the perspective of the Church of Ukraine, pastors and church in Ukraine, as compared to the Church, Orthodox, really, Russian Orthodox, in Russia. I hadn't really thought about it, but you made it clear that it was not the same. Could you give us some insights into that distinctive and those differences, please?
Well, Russia, first of all, you have to understand the basics and the foundation that Russia was able to lay. So they decided to attack a moral campus of the nation. And as they manipulated with this moral grounds, they were able to detach the church from its foundation and its basis. And what happens as a result, the church in let's say, the Russian Orthodox Church of a Moscow Patriarch is one group of churches. And then the Ukrainian Church, Orthodox Church of a Kiev's Patriarch is a different churches. It's obviously there are more layers to this, like Greek Catholics and the Greek Orthodox, but we're not going to get into that. So there's a big difference between Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. And the difference is, however, is loyalty to the emperor, to the Caesar. They're not gonna tell you that. But in their policies, in their loyalty, in the way they conduct the services, this agenda is always in priority. It's an ultimate agenda to spread the imperial ambitions of their lords.
So the Russian Orthodox Church leaders, are they tied tightly to Vladimir Putin and the government? And where are they in attitude to the Ukrainian Christians? Do they think that Ukrainians ought to be lying down and submitting to the Russian invasion, or how do they view that in the next few seconds here? Go ahead.
Well, obviously, not everyone is like that. I know a very good and godly and honest people in the Russian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarch. That's the fact. But the leadership of Russian Orthodox Church and the Patriarch himself, it's nothing new. He is an ex-KGB colonel, so you kind of figure this one out yourself. But yes, they are in bed with the Russian government, and they just service them the way they want them to serve them. So there is no new. It has been going for centuries in our country's history. So Russia is repeating something that was done under the Tsar of Russia, where the church was in bed with the Tsar, and that's the case.
Okay, and now I'm just going to leave it right there, ladies and gentlemen. You get a view. It's a perspective. Last program, Alex talked about worldview. We talk about worldview on all of our programs regularly, and this is an example of worldview affecting how people on the East or the West view the conflict currently underway in Ukraine. We'll be right back.
Truth, flexible or permanent? The Bible, ancient history, or powerfully relevant? Culture, a reflection of enlightenment or warning signs? The pastor, commentator, or frontline combatant? Every day, American Pastors Network speaks to these questions where and when they matter. With hundreds of affiliate radio stations nationwide, a website and mobile app screening today's headlines through the twin lenses of the Bible and the Constitution, educating, informing, equipping. This is the American Pastors Network. The time is now to stand in the gap for truth.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and we're having, this is our second program with Ukrainian pastor Alex Cherny, and Alex's perspective is just so unique and so helpful for context right now, what's going on in the world, because not only does he have 25 plus years of experience pastoring and working with churches in Ukraine, but he is originally from Crimea, and as these different things have unfolded over the last decade, it has actually cost him friendships and relationships with loved ones, and has changed his life as he's tried to take a stand as a Christian for the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. So, Pastor Alex, I want to just kind of get some more context as things have been unfolding so fast for the last couple of months with the most recent invasion into Ukraine from Putin's forces. But I want to go somewhere that might be difficult. Sam and I have talked about this on the radio quite at length, but trying to figure out the motivation between a madman like for dictator Putin. It may be impossible, but there have been a lot of theories thrown out there. What's motivating him to invade, to attack Ukraine right now? And some say that he was wanting to make sure Ukraine didn't join NATO. Some say that he's taking some kind of moral high ground and uncovering evil things that are going on in Ukraine. Others say that he's trying to bring back a religious Russian church from Kiev and to Moscow and things. Lots of different theories out there, but for context, from your point of view, what you've seen, this is your home, what is your perspective, and what are some of your thoughts that might lead us to understand what could be motivating President Putin to do these things?
Yes, Isaac. First of all, what's important, not what has been sent, but what has not been sent. So what they're telling us, you can just throw it out of the table and it's not important what they are not telling us. If Putin is just doing something regarding NATO, why is he killing the civilians? The way they do, all the murder, the rape, the level, it's horrible. He is killing the civil infrastructure. What he's doing to my country has nothing to do with NATO or anything or any other of his statements. What he is clearly doing, he is holding the religious, and I want to highlight the word religious war on Ukraine. By the religious war, I mean the civilization of all the barbaric views and beliefs that Russia has is fighting against something else, some different civilization. Not good, not better, not worse, but just different. And because we're different, it's impossible for Russia to maintain its status because someone else is living better than them. It's just their mentality. It's their mental block. So if that would have been for Ukraine, he would have attacked Baltic states. Why? Because they're better. They live better. They think differently. They're free. Next target would be Poland. It's never going to end. He told us way back he wants to restore Soviet Union and its empire, period.
All right, we're just going to leave it right there, Alex, and we'll just leave it right there. And I think that's a good summary. Let's shift now a bit if we can. I want to ask you something that again, I talked with you about on the radio program, Stand on the Gap Today. But in my time, in my visits in Ukraine, and you and I have been at certain churches, even here in the United States, Ukrainian churches, and on social media, you will see it. And that is this. To me, it's a phenomenon. So many of the people, the churches certainly, but families that you see on social media are singing. And I'm going to say not just singing to sing, but a robust type of singing that even though I don't understand all of the words at all, I can sense the emotion, the seriousness, and even in the midst of trouble, it seems that they are singing. Is that just me? Or is that something that really flows out of the heart of what I'm going to say freedom-loving, and particularly freedom-loving Christian Ukrainians?
Right. No, you're not alone with this. The Ukraine is a very singing nation. I'm not the expert why, but I could just throw my guess. First of all, Russia is not the same way. They do sing as any other nation, but they are not the same way. There's more of a spirit of oppression. And I have a moral right to say that because I've been to Russia many times, and I've been to the cities and I've been in the villages. But Ukrainian singing goes all the way back to their DNA, to our DNA. And DNA is basically we were fighting for our freedom. We're striving to get freedom for centuries, and centuries. And this is the uplifting of our spirits that lifts us to the deliverer, someone who can truly and finally, ultimately deliver us from our oppression. And we have been oppressed by Russia in this case, not only, don't get me wrong, not only, but to deliver us from this oppression. And we could finally have our own nation under God and with the liberty and justice for all.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex, what you're saying makes sense. And I remember my dad, even back when Gorbachev was still in power, the Iron Curtain, as they used to call it here in the States, was up. I remember him coming back from trips to the USSR and talking in particular how striking the services and the singing were in the Ukrainian churches and services. And the little bit, he couldn't interact a whole lot with the underground churches, but what he did do, and I remember some neat stories of him and some Ukrainian pastors hugging and praying for each other. They were actually praying for my dad because he said, I pray for you under your difficulty and persecution. And they said, we pray for you under the difficulty to live with such a materialistic nation that doesn't, can't focus on God. And that, is a striking thing to think about, but you kind of brought this up in a private conversation you were having with Sam and I, and that is that the higher the stakes, humanly speaking, the higher the stakes spiritually speaking. So when we see great physical disasters or conflicts going on in this world, God's grace and God's work and God's kingdom work is elevated even higher oftentimes. And that's what my dad saw in Ukraine, both before and after the fall of the Iron Curtain. But I wonder about right now, while we're in the midst of this war that's happening, are you seeing, are you hearing of souls coming to Christ? Is there any hint that there could be revival or kingdom work going on in spite of the demonic, barbaric things that are happening?
Absolutely, Isaac. Let me throw the example about my own life. When we became a refugee for the first time in our own countries, because we had to flee Crimea due to the threats that I was getting, even by SMS from my own church members, I remember that feeling that you've lost everything, that you are on the run, that you have no hope, no anything. I mean, nothing that you used to have. So now, obviously, stakes are higher. But I remember in the midst of the pain and the suffering, you tend to get the best out of you together with the worst. And the fight that is going on is taking place with this suffering feeling where you finally making your choice. I am going to sacrifice what else I have, but I'm sacrificing for the kingdom, for the other people, for the liberty and justice for all. So what's going on right now, people, church being mobilized, and church takes the forerun of all the humanitarian initiatives, and church does all the work together. I know it's probably going to be very difficult for you guys to hear, but churches does more and better work than the Red Cross. It's just a waste of money. But the church does a better work in the sense that every pastor, every local church becomes an initiator of that local chain of support and relief initiatives, helping people on the ground. And in the midst of all of that, when you're ministering to the people, when someone who's lost everything and has no hope, when you offer him something that you have and experience yourself, the robust feeling gets transferred over, and it quiet struggle to find the right word, but it's so not unique, but genuine. So the people could feel the love of God, because when someone out of the blue, out of the pure motives of their heart offers you help and hope, you tend to accept that, and that's the glory of God.
And Alex, that walks us right into what God has laid on our heart, and you're a part of this, and that is how we as American Christians, and how we, because of what God has done with the American Pastors Network and folks like you, whose knowledge of the Word is so deep, and people have gotten to know you a little bit on here, and that is this. Build it out just a little bit more, but the ability to deliver help, which obviously is a great need. So you can tell us a little bit, how great is the need of the people in Ukraine? I think the numbers I've heard at the taping of this program are nearly 4 million Ukrainians that have fled the country. You've got entire cities, as you said, that are just completely bombed out. What are these people doing? Why is the church, go a little bit further, why is the church and the pastor of the churches and even like in our case, the American Pastors Network, what was done, helping to work and coordinate the gifts and the volunteer help of people in America to come and help. Why is that as a model so much more effective?
Because church is a part of a society. We are the Ukraine. As much as Ukraine, we are as much as Ukraine as anybody else. But we have something else. We have hope. We have the energy and grace and supernatural inspiration to do things. And number one, we have this moral ground, moral compass that helps us to guide our sail, if you will, because we are helping other people, not because it's the right thing to do or no, because this is the way our Father in heaven conducts himself to the people of Ukraine. We are doing it out of the robust feeling, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, it becomes personal. Me and my son, we put together a box of medical supply ourselves. although I'm here and my son is in Ukraine. So he went out to the drugstore and he packed the whole box up to the level that he had, and he shipped it over to the people in need. The need is big and is different, as you said, Sam, but you have to really separate the two. The frontline need, the cities are on the front line, they need something else rather than the cities are deep in the land close to the border where all the refugees are settling. So obviously, with the refugees are settling, there is more need of a certain kind, like whatever required for them to settle in. But there's one in particular need that only church can fulfill, is the counseling and the comfort. Think about families being destroyed and killed. Think about children left alone, wives left alone, husbands were left alone. Who is going to offer them help? How are you going to deal with it? Psychologists? Forget it. It's not going to work. It's just a business. Who is going to offer the robust hope to these people? How are you going to deal with the loss of your loved ones? How are you going to approach that? And what's next? How are you going to compensate that? There's no compensation for it. There's got to be a greater hope. You have to offer them something that you have yourself. And if God helped me in my own need, when I've lost everything, when everyone turned their back on me and I became nothing, and God reached down to me and said, I love you and I appreciate what you're doing. I'm so proud of it. I've never heard it from my dad. I'm so proud of it. But I've heard it from my Heavenly Father all that time. And that had given me a hope to live on and to keep helping other people. And that's what I'm up to do.
And Pastor Alex Cherny, thank you so much for being with us today. What an insight into what is actually happening there in Ukraine. Thank you, and I pray for you and your family that you'll be able to be joined back together again. And God's got a role for you to play, and it's a pleasure to be able to work with you. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment.
Stand in the Gap is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Same as we've had these two interviews now with Pastor Alex, I think a lot of folks are wondering, how can they help? How can they help with the initiative you've talked about with American Pastors Network? Just go ahead and explain that to us so we can know how to chip in.
Well, you know, I'll call you Alex. Isaac, I've been saying Alex a lot here. It's very simple. We have a website that's set up called ukraineinitiative.com. And if our listeners our viewers go to ukraineinitiative.com, you will find there the ability for you to volunteer. If you perhaps could be one of those 10 men, we're sending teams of 10 men. Our goal is for 50 teams of 10 men, each taking $100,000 and then buying supplies and then taking it into churches and distributing it as directed and prioritized by the churches in Ukraine, led by the pastors in Ukraine, but coordinated with the American Pastors Network. You can be a part. No gift too large, no gift too small. What do we actually need? Well, if you were to take 50 teams at 10 men a team at $100,000, that's $5 million. Monies of that magnitude are needed because you're not talking about 2 or 3 people in need. You're talking about tens of thousands of people. And we're delivering this through the churches for the purposes of accountability, and we're trying to follow the biblical model. Believers helping believers. And what will that do? When believers help believers, the unsaved world sees the difference and the opportunity to share the gospel which is already happening as our first team, as we do this program, is on the ground. Actually, 25 are on the ground being coordinated together now. You can be a part of that. Go to our website, ukraineinitiative.com. Give there. You can pray. You can also volunteer. And we will be posting, and actually we have videos on there as these people are being helped, as things are being given out. Videos are there on the website, ukraineinitiative.com, where you can actually stay up to date and see exactly what's happening, transparent, accountable, pastors to churches to pastors to people on the ground.